The morning sun over the Valorian estate did not bring warmth. It brought a cold, sharp light that exposed every crack in the stonework, every shadow in the courtyard. It was the morning after the royal ball, the morning after I had looked Prince Valerius in the eye and refused to disappear. I stood on the front porch, my hands clasped behind my back, watching the spectacle unfolding in my driveway. It was a scene straight out of a heroic tapestry, and it made me sick. They were all there, Ilara's real family, her adventure party. Kalen, the warrior, was sharpening a broadsword that looked heavy enough to cut a carriage in half. He laughed at something Lyra, the healer, said, his perfect teeth flashing in the sunlight. Thorn, the massive tank, was loading supplies with the ease of a man handling feathers. Vesper, the rogue, sat perched on the gate, flipping a dagger, her eyes scanning the perimeter for threats that weren't there yet. And then there was Ilara. She emerged from the manor, dressed not in the silk and velvet of the ballroom, but in her battle regalia, white leather reinforced with mithril plates, a cloak woven with protective runes. She looked like a Valkyrie. She looked like she belonged with them, not with the man in the black suit standing on the porch. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned to face me. The distance between us was only a few meters, but it felt like an ocean. "The border reports are troubling," Ilara said, her voice devoid of the emotion she had shown last night. "The border reports are troubling. A surge in monster activity, anomalies in the mana currents. My team and I are required to investigate." I nodded slowly. "Of course, duty calls, Lady Everhart." She narrowed her eyes slightly. "You seem remarkably calm about my departure, Aric. Usually you would be begging me to stay or asking for access to the treasury before I left." "I am simply accepting reality," I replied, keeping my face a mask of polite indifference. "You are a grand mage. I am an estate engineer. We both have our roles to play. You go save the world. I will ensure you have a home to return to." She studied me for a long moment. Her violet eyes searched mine, looking for the drunkard, the weakling, the desperate husband. She didn't find him. She found a wall. "Very well," she said, turning away. "I expect to be gone for 2 weeks. Do not cause trouble while I am away. The prince was displeased last night. Do not give him a reason to act." "I would never dream of it," I lied. She mounted her white horse. Kalen rode up beside her, offering her a smile that was far too intimate. She didn't return it, but she didn't reject it either. They rode out through the iron gates, a parade of power and magic, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. I watched until they disappeared over the hill. I watched until the last shimmer of magical energy faded from the air. And then, for the first time in 24 hours, I exhaled. My shoulders dropped. The rigid posture of Lord Valorian melted away. I wasn't a husband anymore. I wasn't a political pawn. I was free. "Sebastian," I called out, not looking back. The old butler stepped out from the shadows of the doorway. "Sir?" "Lock the gates, raise the drawbridge if you have to, and bring a bottle of the good brandy to the study. Not for drinking, for thinking." "At once, sir." I walked back into the manor. The silence was beautiful. Without Ilara's overwhelming magical aura pressing down on the house, the air felt lighter. Physics returned to normal. Logic returned to the throne. I entered my study and went straight to the large map of the kingdom spread across the table. I picked up a red marker. 2 weeks, I whispered to myself. She gave me a 2-week window. That was a lifetime for an engineer. I sat down, my mind shifting gears. The emotional fatigue of the ball was gone, replaced by the cold, rhythmic ticking of a countdown. The prince, Valerius. He hadn't just been annoyed last night. He had been humiliated. Narcissists do not forgive humiliation. He would retaliate. He wouldn't send an army, That would be too public. He would send shadows. He would try to remove the trash baron quietly so he could comfort the grieving widow when she returned. "Let him come," I murmured, tracing the lines of the capital city on the map. Sebastian entered the room with a tray. He poured a cup of black coffee, my preference, and set it down. "The staff is asking for instructions, sir. With the mistress gone, they expect a return to the old ways, laziness, disorder." "Disappoint them," I said, taking a sip of the bitter coffee. "The schedule remains, the repairs continue, but Sebastian, we're shifting priorities." "Sir?" "We are entering Phase 2, the War of Information." I pulled a stack of documents from a drawer. These were the files I had stolen from the archive of whispers beneath the manor, the dirt on the minor lords, the embezzlement records. "Prince Valerius thinks he is untouchable because he sits on a throne of gold. He thinks power comes from mana. He is wrong. Power comes from perception. If the people think you're a god, you're a god. If they think you're a thief, you're just a criminal in a crown." "You intend to blackmail the crown prince?" Sebastian asked, his voice hushed. "That is treason, sir. That is execution." "No," I corrected. "Blackmail is crude. I intend to erode him. I want you to activate the network my father built. Find the contacts in the capital, the gossip mongers, the disgruntled merchants, the scribes who feel underpaid." I tapped a specific document. It was a report on the Royal Mining Guild. "Valerius has been funding his personal guard by skimming profits from the silver mines. The miners are working in unsafe conditions. I want that information leaked, not to the king, to the workers." Sebastian's eyes widened. "You want to start a strike?" "I want to start a fire," I said coldly. "If Valerius is busy putting out riots in the mining district, he won't have the time to look at this estate. We need a distraction, Sebastian. We need chaos." "It shall be done," Sebastian said, a hint of a smile touching his lips. He was enjoying this. The old spy in him was waking up. "Good. Now, leave me. I have personal research to attend to." Sebastian bowed and left. I walked back into the bookshelf. I pushed the black book on siege warfare, triggering the hidden mechanism. The passage to the basement opened. I descended into the dark, my workshop, my sanctuary. The Aegis suit stood in its glass case, recharged and waiting. The equalizer lay on the workbench, dismantled for cleaning. But today, I wasn't looking at weapons. I was looking at the board pinned on the wall. It was covered with sketches, formulas, and theories about dimensional rifts. "I can't stay here," I said to the empty room. "Even if I defeat the prince, I am still a null. I am still a glitch in this world. I need to go home." I looked at the latest translation I had deciphered from the pre-collapse texts. It mentioned a secondary facility, not a military bunker like the Silent Spire, but a laboratory, a place where the ancients researched automated consciousness and dimensional bridging. It was located in the eastern ruin belt, a place infested with monsters. If I can find their research core, I thought, my mind racing, I could build something better than a suit. I could build an army, automata, machines that don't need mana, machines that follow logic. And maybe, just maybe, I could find the coordinates back to Earth. I grabbed my coat. Ilara was gone. The prince was plotting. The assassins were undoubtedly sharpening their blades right now, waiting for nightfall. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. They thought they were hunting a rabbit. I picked up the equalizer and slid the magazine of blue mana crystals into the grip. The mechanical click echoed in the silence. "Let the shadows come," I whispered. "The architect is ready to work." Night fell over the Valorian estate like a heavy velvet shroud. The crickets were silent. The wind had died down. To an ordinary person, it was a peaceful night. To me, it was a tactical vacuum waiting to be filled. I sat in the main drawing room. The very room where Garmin had tried to extort me months ago. I wasn't drinking wine. I wasn't reading a book. I was sitting in the dark, watching the moonlight cut across the floorboards. I had sent the staff away to the servants' quarters in the fortified basement. Sebastian was guarding the door with a shotgun I had modified for him. He didn't like guns, but he liked living, so he accepted it. 3, I counted softly. A faint vibration traveled through the floor. It wasn't a footstep. It was too light. It was the displacement of air caused by a window being cut on the second floor. 4. Another vibration. The roof. 5. The balcony. They were good. I had to give them that. They moved with the fluid grace of water. No mana signatures, no magical light. These weren't battle mages screaming incantations. These were royal assassins, the silent hand. They expected to find a sleeping drunkard. They expected to find a magical alarm system that they could disable with a dispel charm. But I don't use magic alarms. I use tension wires. I use pressure plates calibrated to the weight of a mouse. I use physics. And right now, the physics told me there were 6 intruders inside my home. I stood up slowly, adjusting the leather holster of the equalizer under my coat. I wasn't wearing the full Aegis suit. It was too bulky for indoor fighting, but I wore the gauntlets and the greaves hidden under my clothes. "Welcome to the kill box," I whispered. I picked up a small metal object from the table, a remote detonator, wired not to explosives, but to the gas lines I had installed in the hallway walls. I pressed the button. Somewhere upstairs, a cloud of concentrated pepper spray and tear gas, distilled from alchemy ingredients, but deployed via pressurized canisters, erupted into the corridor. I heard the first sound of the night, a choked gasp, a stumble. Target 1 compromised, I noted. Then the silence broke. The assassins realized they had walked into a trap. They stopped sneaking and started rushing. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. I saw the first shadow detach itself from the darkness of the doorway. A figure clad in tight black leather, face covered by a mask, dual daggers gleaming in the moonlight. He saw me standing in the middle of the room. He didn't hesitate. He lunged, closing the distance in a heartbeat, his daggers aiming for my throat. He was fast, but I had calculated the vectors. I didn't dodge. I raised my left arm. Clang! The daggers struck the hidden Aegis gauntlet beneath my sleeve. The steel didn't cut skin. It sparked against high-tensile alloy. The assassin's eyes widened behind his mask. He had hit what should have been flesh and found iron. Before he could recover, I drew the equalizer with my right hand. I didn't aim for the head, too small a target in the dark. I jammed the barrel into his stomach and pulled the trigger. Boom! The kinetic blast was muffled by his body, but the effect was devastating. The assassin was lifted off his feet and thrown across the room, crashing into a display cabinet. He didn't get up. 1 down, I said, my voice calm in the ringing silence. 5 to go. 2 more entered from the garden doors, shattering the glass. They saw the flash. They knew I was armed. They split up, flanking me. Classic pincer movement. 1 went left, hiding behind the sofa. The other went right, using the pillars for cover. "Aric Valorian," a voice hissed from the shadows. It was the one on the right. "Drop the weapon. We only want your head. Make it easy and we won't burn the house down." "You're threatening the house?" I asked, stepping back into the cover of the fireplace. "I just paid for the roof to be fixed. That is incredibly rude." "Die, trash!" The assassin on the left broke cover, throwing a throwing star. It whizzed past my ear, embedding itself in the mantelpiece. I tracked his movement. He was fast, enhanced by a speed spell, but he was moving in a straight line. I fired. The blue beam of kinetic energy tore through the upholstery of the sofa and caught him in the leg. He screamed, a high-pitched sound that shattered the tension. The second assassin, the talker, charged where I was distracted. He was smarter.
He used a smoke bomb, vanishing in a cloud of gray fog. I couldn't see him, but I didn't need to see him. I had the floor plans memorized. I knew exactly where the floorboards creaked. Creak. 3 meters to my left. I swung the equalizer blindly and fired. The shot missed the man, but hit the stone pillar next to his head, sending a shower of stone shrapnel into his face. He staggered back, blinded. I closed the distance. I holstered the gun and grabbed him by the throat with my mechanical gauntlet. I squeezed. The servos whined as I lifted him off the ground. "Who sent you?" I demanded. He clawed at my arm, choking. "The shadow. I don't care about your guild. I want the client. Was it the prince?" He spat at me. "You are dead anyway." I threw him against the wall, knocking him unconscious. 3 down, 3 left. Suddenly, a heavy silence fell. The remaining 3 weren't attacking. They were retreating. They realized the target wasn't a soft noble. He was a hornet's nest. "Oh no," I muttered, reloading the crystal cartridge. "You don't get to leave. You are the message." I ran out into the hallway. I saw them running towards the front door. I aimed at the chandelier hanging above the foyer. A single, precise shot to the chain. Snap! The massive crystal fixture plummeted. Crash! It smashed into the floor right in front of them, blocking their exit in a shower of glass and metal. They turned, trapped. I stood at the top of the corridor, the smoking pistol in my hand. This is private property, and I have a very strict policy against trespassers. The fight that followed was short, brutal, and loud. It wasn't a duel, it was an execution. The equalizer barked twice more. 2 bodies fell. The last one, the leader, judging by the gold trim on his mask, dropped his sword. He held up his hands. "I yield. I yield. By the code of the guild, I demand parley." I walked down the stairs, my boots crunching on the broken chandelier glass. I stopped in front of him. I leveled the gun on his forehead. Parley is for wars. This is a home invasion. "I have information," he pleaded, eyes darting to the gun. "I can give you a name." "I already have the name," I said softly. "Valerius." The assassin flinched. That was all the confirmation I needed. The micro-expression, the fear. "He paid us triple," the assassin confessed, the words spilling out. "He said you were an insult to the crown. He said Lady Ilara needed to be free." I lowered the gun slightly. Cold rage boiled in my chest. It wasn't just political, it was personal. Valerius wasn't just trying to kill me. He was trying to save my wife from me. He thought he was the hero of this story. "Get up," I ordered. The assassin blinked. You're letting me go?" "I am," I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a coin, a gold coin with the Valorian crest. I tossed it to him. He caught it, confused. "Take that to Prince Valerius. Tell him the job is done. Tell him I am dead." The assassin stared at me. "What?" "If he thinks I'm dead, he will get sloppy. He will make a move on Ilara, and when he does, I will be there. Now go, before I change my mind." The assassin didn't wait. He scrambled over the debris and vanished into the night. Sebastian appeared from the basement door, shotgun in hand. He looked at the bodies, the shattered glass, the ruined furniture. "Messy evening, sir," Sebastian noted dryly. "Cleaning crew, Sebastian," I said, holstering my weapon. "Dispose of the bodies, no questions asked, and send a message to the mining guild contacts. Tell them to accelerate the strike. And you, sir?" I walked towards the broken window, looking out at the moon. "I have a ruin to explore," I said. "The prince thinks he has won. Let him enjoy his victory for a few days, because when I come back, I'm going to bring the whole kingdom down on his head."
3 days. That's how long it takes to ride from the capital to the eastern ruin belt. 3 days of silence. 3 days of solitude. I left Sebastian with clear orders: maintain the illusion. To the world, Aric Valorian is dead, killed by assassins. To the staff, I am recovering in isolation. This lie buys me time to find the answers I need. My horse, a black mare I named Shadow, snorted nervously as we crossed the tree line. She could feel it too. The air here was different. It wasn't just cold, it was stale, like the inside of a tomb that hasn't been opened in centuries. I patted her neck, trying to calm her, but my eyes were scanning the horizon. According to the ancient texts I deciphered, this wasn't just a ruin, it was a facility, a research outpost from the pre-collapse era. They built automates here, machines of war that didn't require food, sleep, or mana. If I can find a working core, or even a schematic, I can build my own army. I won't need to rely on politics or mercenaries. I will have cold, hard steel obeying my commands. And perhaps, buried in their databanks, is the calculation for a dimensional bridge back to Earth. We reached the edge of a massive cliff. I pulled the reins. "Easy, girl," I whispered. Below us, the valley opened up like a wound in the earth. And there it was, the ruin. It was colossal, a fortress of gray stone and twisted iron, half swallowed by the vegetation. Vines as thick as pythons choked the towers. Green mist drifted through the shattered archways. I dismounted and tied Shadow to a dead tree. "Wait here," I told her. "If anything approaches, run." I walked to the edge of the cliff. I needed data. I reached up and tapped the metal collar around my neck. The mechanism hummed. Click, hiss. The Aegis helmet deployed instantly. Liquid metal and nanotech plates slid up from the collar, encasing my head in a sleek black visor. The world turned into a stream of digital information. System online. Battery 85%. Scanning topography. The HUD, heads-up display, highlighted the ruin in red wireframe. "Thermal signature," I commanded. The view shifted. I was looking for heat. I was looking for life. The ruins should be empty, but the scanner picked up movement. Hundreds of small, erratic heat signatures moving in the courtyard below. Too small for humans, too organized for wolves. I zoomed in. They were humanoid, short, hunched, carrying crude weapons. Target ID, goblin. Threat level, low, individual. High, swarm. "Goblins," I muttered, retracting the helmet. The metal plate slid back into my collar, revealing my face to the cool air. Goblins were the rats of this world. Individually, they were weak. A child with a stick could fight one off, but they never came alone. Where there is one goblin, there are 50. And if they have taken over the facility, they might have destroyed the technology I came to save. I checked my equipment. The equalizer on my right hip, fully loaded. 6 spare mana crystal cartridges in my belt pouches. A short combat knife on my left hip, and the Aegis suit hidden beneath my heavy coat, humming silently against my skin. "Scavengers," I spat the word out with disgust. "They are desecrating a monument of science." I began the descent down the narrow rocky path leading to the ruin's entrance. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying the smell of rot and unwashed bodies. As I got closer, I saw the signs of their occupation. Crude totems made of bone and scrap metal, graffiti smeared in mud and blood on the pristine ancient walls. They had turned a laboratory into a nest. I stopped by a large stone pillar. Something caught my eye. It was a piece of metal, rusted and bent, used as a part of a goblin barricade. I wiped the dirt off it. It was a robot arm, a hydraulic piston from an ancient automate. My engineer's heart broke a little. They were using advanced technology as scrap metal to build fences. "Ignorance," I whispered, gripping the handle of my gun. "It is the greatest enemy of progress." A twig snapped behind me. I didn't turn around immediately. I listened. The breathing was raspy, wet. The smell of sour milk hit my nose. A scout. I turned slowly. Standing 5 meters away was a goblin. It was ugly, green skin covered with warts, wearing a loincloth made of rags. It held a jagged, rusty dagger. It looked at me, blinking its yellow eyes, surprised to see a human this deep in the Badlands. It opened its mouth to scream, to alert the horde. "No," I said. In one fluid motion, I drew the equalizer. I didn't fire. A gunshot would wake the whole valley. Instead, I surged forward, the Aegis suit amplifying my leg muscles. I covered the 5 meters in a blur. I struck him with the heavy pistol barrel right across the temple, a kinetic strike powered by hydraulics. Crack. The goblin crumpled to the ground, unconscious before he hit the dirt. I stood over him, breathing steadily. The silence remained unbroken. Step 1. Infiltration. But as I looked past the unconscious scout toward the dark, gaping maw of the ruin entrance, I realized the heat signatures on my scanner were moving. They were converging. They knew something was here. Step 2, I sighed, checking the safety on my gun. The darkness of the ruin wasn't empty. It was alive. It breathed with the rasping, wet sound of 1,000 lungs. It smelled of rust, mold, and dried blood. I walked into the central atrium. It was a massive, cathedral-like space, supported by iron pillars that stretched up into the gloom. In the center, a large hole in the ceiling let in a shaft of pale, gray light. I stopped in the middle of that light. I made myself a target. "Come out," I whispered. "I know you're there." For a second, nothing happened. Then a single stone fell from the upper balcony. Clack. And then the screaming started. It came from everywhere, from the shadows, from the pillars, from the ceiling. A tide of green skin and rusty metal poured into the light. Goblins, hundreds of them. They didn't attack immediately. They circled, they chattered, they banged their weapons against their shields, shards of old metal and wood. My helmet's HUD lit up like a Christmas tree. Warning, multiple hostiles detected. Count 150 plus. 150 against 1. In a fair fight, I lose. Good thing I don't fight fair, I muttered. A goblin, larger than the others, a sergeant maybe, screeched and pointed a jagged sword at me. The wave crashed. 3 of them lunged at my legs, trying to drag me down. I didn't waste a bullet. I activated the Aegis overdrive. My leg muscles, reinforced by the suit's servos, kicked out with the force of a hydraulic press. I caught the first goblin in the chest. There was a sickening crunch of ribs, and he flew backward into his friends like a bowling ball. I spun, my coat flaring out. I grabbed the second goblin by the neck and threw him into the third. Too slow, I analyzed. Inefficient. I drew the equalizer. I didn't aim for individuals. I aimed for clusters. Boom. The sound of the Maniloc pistol in the enclosed space was deafening. It wasn't a bang. It was a thunderclap. The blue beam of kinetic energy hit the flagstone in the middle of the charging group. The impact shattered the flagstones. Shrapnel and shockwaves tore through the front line. 6 goblins were thrown into the air, their rag armor useless against pure force. The horde froze. They had never seen magic like this. No chanting, no glowing circles, just thunder and death. Fear, I noted, a useful variable. I walked forward, firing rhythmically. Boom, boom, boom. Each shot was a kill, or a multi-kill. I was an engineer clearing an obstruction. But they were adapting. The sergeant screeched again, and the goblins split up. Archers appeared on the balcony. Arrows rained down. I raised my left arm. The Aegis Vombrace deployed a small, hard-light kinetic shield, a prototype feature I had barely tested. Ping, ping, ping. The arrows bounced off the shimmering blue hexagon that appeared over my forearm. Battery, 78%. Shield drain, high. I can't tank this forever. I need to move. I broke into a run, not away from them, but through them. I became a battering ram. A goblin jumped on my back,
stabbing at my neck. The high collar of the coat protected me, but the weight was annoying. I slammed my back into a stone pillar, crushing the creature. I reached the stairs leading to the upper level. This was the choke point. I turned and fired the last shot in the crystal. Click. Empty. Reloading, I shouted to no one, my voice amplified by the helmet speakers to sound demonic. I ejected the spent crystal. It smoked as it hit the stairs. I grabbed a fresh blue cartridge from my belt and slammed it home. Ka-chunk. Hum. The gun sang with power again. But the archers were the problem. They had the high ground. I looked up. The balcony was supported by rusted iron chains. Physics, I smiled behind my visor. I didn't shoot the goblins. I aimed at the anchor point of the chain, the weakest link. I fired. The blue beam severed the rusted metal instantly. The chain snapped like a whip crack. The entire section of the balcony collapsed. 10 goblin archers screamed as they fell 20 meters to the stone floor below. The debris crushed another group on the ground. Dust and silence filled the hall for a heartbeat. The remaining goblins looked at the destruction. They looked at me, standing on the stairs, guns smoking, eyes glowing blue in the dark. They hesitated. But then a roar shook the facility, a roar that wasn't a goblin. From the deep darkness at the far end of the hall, heavy steps approached. Thud, thud, thud. The goblins parted, bowing their heads in fear. My scanner picked up a massive heat signature. Warning, elite hostile detected. Class, champion. Finally, I said, ejecting the half-used crystal and loading a fresh one, my last full one. I stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at the carnage I had created. I was bruised. My battery was draining. I had used half my ammo, but I was alive, and the architect was just getting warmed up. Send him in, I challenged the darkness. I have a bullet with his name on it.
The floor shook. Not a vibration, but a quake. The goblin champion stepped into the light. He stood 8 feet tall, a mountain of scarred green muscle and hate. His armor was a patchwork of rusted iron plates bolted directly into his skin. But it was his weapon that made my blood run cold. It wasn't a rusty club. It was a great sword, taller than a man, forged from a strange matte black metal. It didn't reflect the light. It seemed to swallow it. Target analysis. Champion. Threat level extreme. He roared, a sound that popped my ears, and charged. Distance, I told myself. Keep the distance. I raised the equalizer and fired. Boom. The blue beam struck him dead center in the chest, a shot that would have vaporized a normal goblin. The champion didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. He angled his black sword, and the kinetic beam deflected off the metal blade with a screeching sound, blasting a hole in the wall behind him. Impossible, I gasped. That metal, it dispersed the energy. He was on me in a second. He swung the sword. I ducked, activating the Aegis thrusters in my boots. The blade missed my head by an inch, but the wind pressure alone threw me off balance. I slammed into a stone pillar. Warning, impact detected. Armor integrity, 85%. I scrambled to my feet, but he was too fast for his size. He backhanded me with a fist the size of a boulder. Crunch. I flew across the atrium and crashed into the stairs. My vision blurred. Red warning lights flashed in my HUD. Too strong, I coughed, tasting blood. He is physically stronger than the suit's dampeners. The champion laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. He enjoyed this. He walked toward me slowly, dragging the black sword across the stone floor. Sparks flew. I aimed for his head. I pulled the trigger. Click. Jam? No. Overheat. The rapid firing from the ambush had stressed the cooling vents. Damn it! I holstered the gun and drew my combat knife. It felt like a toothpick against a dragon. The champion lunged. I rolled forward, sliding between his legs, slashing at his hamstring. The knife cut through the leather straps, but his skin was like old leather. It barely scratched him.
He spun around with terrifying speed and kicked me in the chest. I hit the wall hard. I felt a rib crack. I fell to my knees, gasping for air. The suit was screaming warnings now. Battery, 15%, critical failure imminent. He grabbed me by the throat. He lifted me up one-handed, my feet dangling 2 feet off the ground. He brought his face close to mine. His breath smelled of rotting meat. He raised the hilt of his sword to crush my skull. Think, Aric, think! I couldn't break his grip. I couldn't shoot. He smashed the heavy metal pommel of his sword into my face. Crack! My helmet shattered. The visor exploded inward. Shards of glass and metal cut into my skin. A jagged piece of the helmet frame dug deep into my forehead, right above the left eyebrow. Blood poured down my face, blinding my left eye. The pain was blinding, white-hot agony. He drew back his hand for the killing blow. Not today, I wheezed. My hand found the overdrive release on my chest piece. I dumped the remaining 15% of the battery into the right arm gauntlet in a single burst. I didn't punch him. I grabbed the exposed flesh of his wrist, the hand holding me. Discharge! The gauntlet released a shockwave of pure electricity and heat directly into his nerves. The champion shrieked. His grip spasmed and opened. I dropped to the floor. I didn't retreat. I lunged up. I grabbed the equalizer. The cooling cycle was done. 1 shot in the crystal. I jammed the barrel under his throat, right into the soft flesh of his throat, bypassing the armor, bypassing the black sword. I looked into his yellow eyes. They were filled with fear now. Go to hell, I whispered through my broken teeth. Boom! The recoil nearly broke my wrist. The blast went straight up, exiting the top of his skull. The champion went rigid. Then, like a tower collapsing, he fell backward. Thud! Silence returned to the ruin. I stood there, swaying. My suit was dead. The lights on the armor faded to black. My helmet was half torn off, hanging by wires. Blood dripped from my forehead, running down my nose, soaking into the collar of my coat. I wiped my eyes, smearing the blood. My hand shook uncontrollably. I looked at the massive corpse. I looked at the black sword lying next to him. I had won, but I was broken. Alara was right, I whispered, my voice breaking. I'm just a man playing soldier. The adrenaline faded, leaving only the cold, throbbing pain in my skull. But I couldn't stop. Not yet. The Goblin Champion was dead, but the mission wasn't over. I limped past the corpse, deeper into the facility. My suit's battery was critical, but I diverted the last reserves to my hacking interface. I found the blast door labeled Sector 4, Advanced Robotics. I forced it open with a crowbar, my muscles screaming. Inside, I expected to see rows of shining automata ready for war. Instead, I saw a graveyard. Huge assembly arms hung limp from the ceiling. The conveyor belts were stripped bare. The goblins hadn't just occupied this place. They had cannibalized it. They had melted down the high-tech alloys to make their crude swords and armor. No, I whispered, walking through the empty fabrication hall. Don't tell me it's all gone. I found a command console that still had a faint amber glow. I wiped the dust from the screen and jacked my suit's data cable into the port. Connecting. Accessing Project Iron Legion. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The blueprints. The screen flickered. A schematic appeared. A beautiful bipedal war machine. Perfect logic. Perfect lethality. Downloading blueprint. Error. Data corrupted. Segment 4 missing. Segment 8 missing. Come on, I begged, typing furiously with my one good hand. Give me something, anything. File deleted. The screen went black. The memory core had degraded centuries ago. The blueprints were dust.
I punched the console in frustration, cracking the screen. Damn it! I turned away. Forget the robots. The map. I need the map. I stumbled toward the back of the facility, to the Dimensional Research Wing. This room was untouched by the goblins. It was sealed by a pressure lock I had to override manually. In the center of the room stood a massive ring, a dormant portal, and next to it, the navigation computer. I limped over to it. I felt a surge of hope. This computer was shielded. It might still have the data. "Show me Earth," I whispered. "Show me the way home." I activated the terminal. A holographic globe appeared in the air. It showed a galaxy map. Searching coordinates. Sector 001. Terra. The hologram spun. Stars flew by. And then, for 1 second, I saw it. A blue and green planet. Earth. Match found. Tears welled in my eyes. I found it. I can go home. Calculating trajectory. Warning. Power failure. The lights in the room flickered. The hologram of Earth distorted, turning into static. No, don't you dare! I grabbed the console, trying to stabilize the power, but the facility's generator was dead. It had just enough juice for one last boot sequence. System shut down. The hologram vanished. The screen died. The room plunged into absolute darkness. I stood there in the dark, my hand resting on the cold metal. I was so close. I saw it. It was right there. "It's gone," I whispered, my voice breaking. Time ate it. Time took everything. I was the architect of nothing. I was just a grave robber standing in an empty tomb. Defeated, hollowed out, I walked back to the atrium. The body of the goblin champion still lay there. Next to him lay the greatsword, the black metal blade. I knelt beside it. "What are you?" I asked the sword dully. "You survived. The computers died. The robots rusted. But you survived." I reached out with my left hand, the one with the intact glove, to touch the blade. Zit! A shock, violent and invasive, shot up my arm. It wasn't electricity. It felt like hunger. "System alert. Compatible material detected. Initiating assimilation protocol." "Wait, what?" I stammered. "Cancel." The system didn't listen. The black nanotech fabric of my glove suddenly liquefied. Tiny silver and black tendrils erupted from my fingertips, latching onto the sword like roots. They didn't just cover the weapon, they ate it. I watched in horror as the massive greatsword began to dissolve. The solid metal turned into a black sludge that flowed up my arm, disappearing into the Aegis suit. My arm burned. It felt like molten lead was being injected into my veins. Analyzing structure. Kinetic dampening alloy acquired. Downloading muscle memory. Savage strike acquired. Images flashed in my mind. Not my memories, his memories. I saw the goblin champion swinging the sword. I felt the weight of the blade. I felt the technique. Then the system screamed a warning. Warning. Energy reserves critical. Assimilation cost 95%. "Stop!" I yelled, ripping my hand away. The connection severed. The sword was gone, consumed entirely. I fell back on the stone floor, gasping. My suit was completely dead now. It ate the weapon, I realized, staring at my hand. It absorbed the material properties. It copied the technique. I looked at the equalizer. I touched it. Nothing. "Why?" I asked. "Why eat the sword but not the gun?" It had to be the material, ancient metal. My gun was modern steel. The suit was a cannibal. It only ate its own kind. I am wearing a parasite, I thought, a shiver running down my spine. I dragged myself out of the ruin. The sun was setting. Shadow was waiting. I climbed into the saddle. No artifacts, no robot army, no map home. just a headache that felt like a drill boring into my skull, and a suit that eats metal. Let's go home, Shadow. The ride back was long and silent. The physical pain was sharp, but the hollow ache in my chest was worse. I had been so close to seeing Earth again, so close to leaving this nightmare. Now, that door was slammed shut. I arrived at the manor under the cover of night. I didn't go to the front door. I went straight to the stables. I couldn't let anyone see the Aegis suit like this. I stripped off the torn coat. I peeled off the dead black armor and hid it in the false bottom of the feed bin. I took a roll of medical gauze from my saddlebag and wrapped my head tightly, covering the deep gash on my forehead. I put on a spare white shirt I kept for emergencies. When I was done, I didn't look like the architect. I just looked like a man who had been beaten half to death in a back alley. I walked toward the manor, entering through the kitchen to avoid the servants. I just wanted to get to my room and stare at the ceiling. I opened the door. Standing there, by the stove, holding a cup of herbal tea, was Ilara. She wasn't supposed to be back yet. She turned. She saw me. She didn't see a cyborg. She didn't see a soldier. She saw her husband, standing in the doorway, his head wrapped in bloody bandages, his face pale and bruised, his eyes filled with a profound, crushing sadness. She dropped her teacup. Smash! The porcelain shattered on the floor, echoing in the silence. "Aric?" she whispered, her voice trembling with genuine horror. "My gods, you are bleeding. Where have you been?" I looked at her. For one split second, I wanted to tell her everything, but the words died in my throat. Trust is a luxury I cannot afford, especially not with her. If I told her the truth, if she sensed even a fraction of what I really am, she wouldn't see a survivor. She would see a demon who had stolen Aric Valorian's body, and she would burn me alive for it. I didn't collapse. I didn't faint. I forced my legs to lock. I refused to show weakness, even though my soul felt as heavy as lead. "I went for a walk," I croaked, my voice devoid of hope. I stepped past her, my eyes fixed on the dark hallway ahead. I wasn't falling physically, but inside, I was already on my knees.
I stood in the kitchen doorway, swaying slightly. The blood from my forehead had soaked through the bandages, dripping onto the pristine white collar of my shirt. Ilara stared at me, her hands trembling. The shattered teacup lay between us on the floor, sharp fragments glistening in the lantern light. "Where were you?" she demanded again, her voice losing its usual icy composure. "You disappear for days. You come back like this. Who did this to you?" I leaned against the doorframe, too tired to invent a complex lie. "Does it matter?" I replied, my voice raspy. "I seem to recall asking you that question many times in the past. Where are you going, Ilara? When will you be back? You never answered me. You told me it wasn't my concern." I looked her in the eye, feeling the blood trickle down my cheek. "So, respectfully, Lady Everhart, this isn't your concern." She flinched. The words hit her harder than a spell. She opened her mouth to argue, but then she looked at the dark red stain spreading on my bandage. "Be quiet," she ordered, not with anger, but with urgency. She stepped over the broken porcelain. She didn't ask for permission. She reached out and placed her hand directly on my forehead, over the soaked gauze. I tried to pull away. "I don't need—" "Be quiet," I said, "be quiet." Her hand began to glow. A soft violet light pulsed from her skin, illuminating the dark kitchen. I braced myself for pain. I expected heat. I expected a shock. Instead, I felt ice. A cool, soothing wave of energy rushed into my skull. My engineer's brain instantly analyzed the sensation. It wasn't just magic. It was rapid cellular regeneration. She was manipulating the biological structure of my skin, knitting the tissues back together at an impossible speed. The throbbing headache vanished instantly. The dizziness cleared. The exhaustion that had been crushing my bones evaporated, replaced by a surge of vitality. I gasped, my eyes widening. I knew she was powerful. I knew she could summon fire and storms. But this defied the laws of entropy. To fix a broken machine instantly? To rewrite reality with a touch? This power, I thought, trembling. It is absolute. It is terrifying. The light faded. Ilara pulled her hand back. The bandage fell away, revealing nothing. No scar, no cut, just smooth, unblemished skin. I touched my forehead. It was perfect. I looked at her with new eyes. For the first time, I truly understood the gap between us. If she wanted to, she wouldn't even need to burn me. She could just stop my heart with a thought. Ilara looked at her own hand, then at me. She saw the shock in my eyes. She misunderstood it. "Have I been that terrible," she asked, softly, "that you would rather bleed than ask for my help?" The question hung in the air. For a second, the Ice Queen was gone. Just a woman standing in a kitchen, realizing she didn't know the man standing in front of her. I buttoned my collar, covering the bloodstains on my shirt. "You aren't terrible, Ilara," I said, my voice steady now, stronger than before. "You are just you, and I am me. We are variables in an equation that doesn't balance." I walked past her toward the hallway. "We should both just walk our own paths," I said, letting the implication of divorce hang in the air. "It's safer that way." I left her standing alone in the kitchen and climbed the stairs to my room.
I entered my private chambers and locked the heavy oak door. I ripped off the blood-stained white shirt and threw it into the fireplace. I watched the flames consume the evidence of my weakness. "Energy restored," I muttered, flexing my hands. "Cognitive functions at 100%. Ilara's magic was incredible. I felt stronger than I had in years, but the debt of gratitude weighed on me. I didn't want to owe her anything. I put on a fresh, high-collared black shirt and fastened the cuffs. The architect was back in uniform. "Sir?" A shadow moved in the corner of the room. Sebastian stepped out. He looked relieved to see me standing upright, but his face was grave. "You look remarkably well, my lord," Sebastian noted, eyeing my healed forehead with a mix of suspicion and relief. "The lady intervened," I said shortly, pouring myself a glass of water. "Report, Sebastian. The counterattack." Sebastian straightened his spine. "It is proceeding better than anticipated. The rumors about the prince's mining operations have spread like wildfire. The Miners' Guild has officially declared a strike. The prince's income is frozen. He is furious." A cold smile touched my lips. "Good. If he has no gold, he can't pay his assassins. That buys us time." "Indeed, sir. However," Sebastian hesitated. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a heavy envelope. It wasn't white. It was crimson red, sealed with heavy gold wax. The seal wasn't the prince's lion. It was a falcon holding a sword. The Valorian family seal. My stomach dropped. The air in the room suddenly felt very thin. "What is that?" "An invitation, sir," Sebastian said, handing it to me as if it were a bomb. I broke the seal. The paper was thick, expensive. The handwriting was sharp, elegant, and aggressive. "To Aric Valorian. Your absence has been noted. Your recent activities have reached the main estate. The matriarch demands your presence. The grand family reunion begins in 3 days. Attendance is mandatory." "Grandmother," I whispered. "The matriarch of the Valorian line. A woman who made Ilara look like a kitten. She was the one who arranged my marriage. She was the one who controlled the family fortune. She was the reason the old Aric drank himself into a stupor." "This is bad timing," I said, crumpling the letter in my fist. "The worst possible timing. The prince is hunting me. I have a parasitic armor hidden in the barn, and I still don't know how to get back to Earth." "You cannot refuse, sir," warned Sebastian softly. "To refuse the matriarch is to be disowned. You would lose the title, you would lose the manor, you would lose your diplomatic immunity." I walked to the window, looking out at the dark grounds. I felt the walls closing in. To my left, a wife who can manipulate biology with a touch. To my right, a prince who wants me dead. And in front of me, a family that treats me like livestock. I am trapped, I thought. Every move I make just tightens the noose. I looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there was Earth, a world of logic, a world where I was free. "Very well, Sebastian," I said, turning back. My eyes were cold. "Prepare the carriage. If the family wants to see the trash baron, let's show them exactly who Aric Valorian has become."